Hello chess enthusiasts. This is a follow-up to the first problem in sport in the USSR, where the booklet in question was devoted to chess in the Soviet Union during the 1970s. This is the second position, and again it's a white to mate in 2 moves. Let's take a look at it. I've done a head count, and the preponderance of material for white is 23 points for his pieces, no pawns, and 16 points for black with its pieces with pawns. So white clearly has a material advantage, but that doesn't always mean to say that it will win. But of course we know that it is a set problem here, so white will win. So the material should count, you would imagine. Before you pause, just let me say 1 or 2 things. In this position, if black's king could move, it would give a rook check, but it can't move. So in a sense, it's in a kind of stalemate. I always find it useful before doing anything else just to check to see if the king can move. If the opponent's king cannot move, then it's probably advantageous to you. Also, while we're looking at this position, the theme generally is with discovered checks. So that is primarily the reason why I've mentioned the fact that if the black king could move, there would be a check, but we've established that it can't. So if you want to pause the video and just have a look at what you consider to be the possibilities, and come back to this in a few moments. Okay, well, looking at this, white is threatening queen g5 mate on the move. I find it useful. I know that many chess players would say that control of the center is key to winning a game of chess. And I remember some years ago when my father and my uncle Bill sat down to play a game, my uncle said, he who controls the center wins the game. But my father had other ideas, and he launched an attack around the edge of the board and he won, and Uncle Bill was the most surprised man. And I think it's often a good idea to look around the edge of the board and see what happens, particularly in the present case, because as I've already stated, queen g5 is the threat. Now, the great Paul Morphy used to generally confine his attack to one side of the board rather than in the center of the board, and no better player has ever existed than Paul Morphy. He was 100 and odd years ahead of his time. And as a kid, I studied most of his games, and there were a few that I haven't managed to see, but I'm currently acquainting myself with those online, and that's quite useful as well. But bearing in mind that queen g5 is the threat, just take a look around the edge of the board and see what you make of it. So really you need to keep in mind the prevention of queen g5. I did say that queen g5 mate. That's not strictly true, because the black king can go to e4 then, if white places his queen on g5. So queen g5 check, king e5 discovered check, hence my earlier comment about the black king not being able to move at the moment, but if you played queen g5 it would be able to. So but queen g5 is the theme here, so keep it in mind. Can you see anything in relation to the minor pieces as to what white will be able to do to force queen g5 mate? I'll give you another clue though, to be fair to you. You do not finish this game off with a queen checkmate in the main line. There are many lines where you do finish the game with a queen checkmate, but the main line that satisfies oneself that one has it right here is not a queen checkmate. So think about that. think about the squares that white needs to control. This e4 square here, like I've just pointed out, if you played queen g5 or queen h5, then the king can go to e4, and you don't want that. So how can you stop that? Just concentrate on, if you move the queen, that e4 is an unoccupied square, and it's an uncontrolled square by white, and then black could assume control of it, and then going to e4, the rook on f3 gives check to the king, white king on f7. Any ideas at all? Okay, what I'll do is I'll move over to my pocket chess set again, which has exactly the same position set up. Let's take a look at it there. Come back to this one. It's been transcribed perfectly, I think. I hope so. Yep. Okay. Right. I found this move within a few minutes, but it took me about 10 to 15 minutes to complete the analysis. It's not an obvious move, but if you concentrate your eyes on e4, because like I say, if white moves that queen, it looks for all the world like checkmate, but then the black king can go to e4 if white plays queen g5 or queen h5. Of course, queen g4 is out because the black king would just take it, so that's no good. So we want to control this square so that it releases the white queen up to do something else. If you want to pause the video again, by all means, if you want to just take a few more seconds, and I'll give you the key move. We need the key move always in these problems. There's nothing straightforward with these Soviet problems, as I have discovered. And as you are discovering as well. I'll give you the key move. It is in fact knight on d7 to c5. And this knight does indeed cover e4. Now what are black's replies? Well, let's do a morphe and go around the edge of the board. If black were to take the bishop, then queen h5. So just to demonstrate that, you can't go to g5 because of the pawn. So queen h5, and now of course the knight is controlling e4 and all the other squares are covered. So that is definitely checkmate. Alternatively, if black plays g6 or g5, if he plays g6, you just play queen g5 and it's mate. If he plays g5, you take the pawn, which is the equivalent of queen g5, and it's still mate because all these key squares are covered by the queen and two knights and king. So we're moving around this way. We've covered taking the bishop, g6, g5. What about if he promotes the pawn? Does it really do any good? No, because no matter to what he promotes it, it's still queen g5 mate. Because again, this knight is working overtime here to protect e4. So that is no good. What about moving the rooks? Well, if this rook here moves anywhere, here, 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 or takes the knight, let's just try taking the knight because it has the same significance whether it takes the knight or it just moves to any of the other squares. What would you say the reply is there? It's not queen g5 and it's not queen h5. Can you see it? Well, the problem is, you see, if you play Queen h5, put the pawn in the way. If you play Queen g5, in fact that is checkmate, isn't it? I must confess I didn't notice that when I was going through it earlier. What I had in mind was to play Queen f4 because the rook has vacated control over the square. Queen f4 is a nice finish because the bishop backs it up, but in fact Queen g5 is still good enough. So you can deduct a point from me on that one, but you can make twice with the queen in that case, both at g5 and f4. Yeah, the king cannot get out of that, because the knight doing its job here does protect e4, so that's fine, okay. So moving the rook along there doesn't do any good, whether it's along to vacant squares or capturing the knight. So supposing this rook captures the knight. Now the queen can't go to f4. So it must go there. And we have a repeat position effectively, but it's this rook in fact that's taken the knight this time instead of this one. And instead of going to f4, which would not be a good idea, you go to g5 and that mates, and the knight is still controlling. So that's fine. So neither of those rooks works. Rook moves rather works. And promoting this doesn't work. So we're coming around like this. Moving this bishop has no significance at all, because it would be Queen g5 mate on the next move. Not Queen h5, because of the... You can only play Queen h5 if it takes the bishop, and then there's no pawn to interpose between the black king and the white queen, so it has to be Queen g5. Right. So we've eliminated all moves by this pawn, the promotion, moves by this rook, moves by this rook, this bishop. What's left? There is one piece of black material that hasn't moved. The king can't move, of course. So by process of elimination, this pawn must move forward. And this is what I would consider the main line. It's the best move. It's not good enough. Now, according to the Soviets, it's mate next move. But what this pawn move has done is it's exposed the white king to check. And when I looked at this for the first time around, realizing that the white king is in check, I thought, no, this can't be right. And then I more or less immediately saw it. There's a winning move there, and it's not with the queen. And the piece that moves doesn't give checkmate. So what we have here is, in advancing the black pawn from d5 to d4, it's exposed the white king to a check from the black bishop. So what is the winning move here that stops that check and checks the black king and mates it? You have to stop that bishop. You can't take that bishop, and taking it wouldn't secure checkmate anyway. Even if you had, say, a piece here that could take it, it wouldn't enable you the next move to inflict checkmate. So that is out the question. So you've had a good chance to look at it. The winning move, and this is what makes this move not only the key move, but the winning move, absolute. Because you come to b3, you're blocking the check, and you're giving check with the rook, and nothing can interpose. Now, before the bishop could interpose, but because it was giving check, of course you had to block it. But in doing so, you're stopping black from checking, but you're revealing a discovered check yourself. And black's king cannot go to any of these squares at all. This knight is not really needed here when you think about it, because the rook covers the 5th rank, the queen covers the 4th rank, and the white king covers here. But there are instances where other pieces are also protecting these squares. Now that is a really neat finish to this problem, and I think I've covered everything there. Forgive my slight slip there with the queen g5, but that only shows that if you're doing it right, there are still opportunities to keep getting it right, and a very pleasing result. I can tell you that I have in fact solved the 3rd one in advance of presenting this, so that will be coming along in due course. And like I say, there are 12 of them, and they do get more difficult as you move along. What I would mention in rounding off this video is the overprotection which was secured. I'll just put this back for a sec just to demonstrate the overprotection by moving this knight here, overprotecting this so that you can move. It's an Aaron Nimzovich piece of strategy out of his book My System from 1925, and Nimzovich was absolutely right in his theory of overprotection and blockade. And as far as controlling the centre is concerned, my father was right, Paul Morphy was right, and Richard Ryti as well, with his New Ideas in Chess in 1922. I have the first edition in German of that, as a matter of fact. It is 100 years old this year, and a very interesting book it is too, and I'll show it to you one of these days. He was absolutely right, and his fellow hypermoderns, that to control the centre with pieces on the flanks like the fianchettos, g3, bishop g2, b3, bishop b2, rather than occupying the centre with pawns, is possibly a better way of doing it than the classical way, although admittedly classical chess is as fine as you can get. But the hypermodern is certainly a workable alternative. And I have played quite a number of games over the years using Larsen's opening b3 and the Ryti opening and the English opening, and of course the King's Indian defence, Grunfeld, modern defence, Benoni, Piet's defence, and very interesting they are too. I hope you enjoyed this game, again as much as I enjoyed going through it with you, and I look forward to presenting the 3rd one in the not too distant future. Enjoy your chess, and bye bye for now.